everyone, this is Sam Creating the Heart, and welcome to the Stamp and Die of the Month blog hop from the Not Too Shabby shop. Make sure that you visit everyone on the hop and leave a comment. Do the raffle copter at the end so that you can win a prize. The Stamp and Die of the Month is this really cute Life's Batter with pancakes. It is adorable. You've got all of these sentiments as well as this large pancake stack to color. Today we are going to be making a slider card. I'm actually using a die that I got from Pink Fresh Studio. I absolutely love this die. However, it's really simple. You don't really need a die for it, and we'll go over more about the simple construction of the slider card after we're done with our coloring. So here's what the die looks like. Like I said, it's very simple to make that without a die. I used a die because I have it, but you absolutely can construct this without a die. I'm going to be using some watercolor pencils. In the first card that I made here as my sample, I actually used my Copics. But I decided it'd be fun to do some watercoloring. And so I stamped that image in Versamark and I gold embossed it, heat embossed it with gold powder. And that way, and I did it on watercolor paper. It's not the best watercolor paper, but it works for this. And what that does is it creates wells for us to do our watercoloring. So we don't have to worry too much about everything bleeding into each other because those embossed lines keep everything together. I'm using a watercolor brush for this technique, and I'm just going to be using watercolor pencils from Tim Holtz's Distress Pencils, but you can use, and I have done this before with watercolor pans. It works really well with those as well because you want something that's going to give you a lot of vibrant color. I find that the ones that you like the ones that are liquid are not very as vibrant usually, but anyway, you could probably use those too. So the colors, I'm using a variety of colors from Tim Holtz. I'm using for my browns, let's see, I'm using like Wild Honey, Vintage Photo, Walnut Stain. For my reds, I'm using Barn Door and Candied Apple. I'm using for my blues, Faded Jeans and Prize Ribbon. I'm using Twisted Citron, Fossilized Amber, and I think that's it. And so I'm not going to color this entire thing, but just give you an idea. So all you do is you take your watercolor brush and just use it as, you know, a way to pull color from the pencil, and then you color it in. So I am starting with the Wild Honey, and so that is going to be for my pancake layer. And so I'm just brushing color on there. I'm not being too concerned about the depth of color because it's okay that some parts are lighter and some parts are darker. It's kind of part of the beauty of using watercolors. So I kind of sped it up a little bit because it can be tedious, but like I said, I'm not doing the whole thing. So I'm going to let that dry for a little bit and brush the old color off. And so I'm going to move on to my blueberries. And so I am using the Faded Jeans here for my blueberries. And there's a little blueberry down at the bottom. And then I'm going to make sure to try to wipe the color off. I don't think I did as good of a job on this one, so I've got to go back. You'll see me. And then I'm going to move on to the strawberries. And so I'm using Candied Apple. And you just give it a little second to dry. I find that because you're not using tons of water, it tends to dry very quickly. But I just move on to other colors, so it just works a little bit better. So I'm using Twisted Citron for the leaves of the strawberry. And then I'm going to go back to the pancakes. And for the pancakes, then I'm going to go over that with the Vintage Photo. And so that gives me more of a pancake kind of look. And so you can see how it kind of darkens up that color. So now I'm going to, I think I'm going to do the syrup. So with the syrup, I start with Vintage Photo and I go over what will be the syrup. And then I let that dry. And now I'm kind of ready to move on to my other colors. So I'm going on to Prize Ribbon, and now I'm going to kind of give a little bit of shadow and dimension to my blueberries. And so I just darken little bits and pieces of the blueberry like the tops and the sides, just to give it a little bit of extra color. And that's with that darker blue. Just a really simple way to get a little bit of shading. I'm going to wipe off the color, and now I'm going to move on to, I think, am I going to do walnut stain? So the walnut stain is going to go over the syrup. Maybe I'm not going to do that yet. I'm going to do the butter, and that's that yellow right there. So when I went back, I did the darker red over the strawberry, and so then I did that walnut stain over the syrup, and for the plate I did some candied apple. And so just doing those little bits of color, you know, when it's all done, it dries and it looks really, really good. Not the greatest of watercolorists. So to make this card, I'm actually using a little bit of a smaller card base. It's 5 1/4 by 4, and the reason for that is that my little pull-out tab is going to stick out a little bit, and that way it can fit in an A2 size card. All you need to do is cut a piece of cardstock or pattern paper, slightly smaller than your card base, and then make a slit. And the slit is about, I would say, 2 3/4 inches long. And you can put that slit kind of near the bottom, or, you know, whatever your bottom is going to be, or your side. And I would recommend gluing any pattern paper you're going to use on top of that cardstock piece, and then going ahead and cutting your slits. And you can just use your paper trimmer for it, or you can, you know, use a blade if you're good at that, which I'm not. And then you just need a piece of cardstock, and this cardstock measures 1 by about 3 inches or so, and that's the mechanism in which it slides. So it's going to fit into that slit. And so first I'm going to go ahead and glue my patterned paper up to onto that top cardstock piece. That's really all you need, is just to draw that slit and have that slider piece. That's it. And some foam tape. You do need foam tape. So there's that slit right there. And so I'm going to take that piece of small cardstock, and it's going to slide in that slit. So the paper that I'm using is this Baker's Dozen slimline paper from the Not Too Shabby shop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that cardstock piece and slide it into the slit right there. And so I actually, just so you know, I put that in backwards. So I had to kind of redo it off camera. So it actually needs to go in the other way, where the cardstock piece is actually flipped over the other way, so that the longer piece is not, the back piece is not pointing to the bottom, it's pointing towards the middle, and the front piece is actually the piece that's pointing towards the bottom. So you need to flip that piece over, and that was my mistake, but I'd already kind of done it, so sorry. I discovered that I made that mistake when I tried to make it slide. So yeah, don't do what I did. So it needs to be flipped the other way. And so what you do then is you put foam tape on 3 sides. That's how I discovered it, because the foam tape didn't match. So you flip it over, and the little strip that's on the back, you're going to put glue on that piece. Imagine that it's flipped around and that piece is actually in the middle and not on the bottom side. And that piece, the slider piece, is cut slightly smaller than your front piece. About, I would say, 1/2 inch from the bottom, 1/2 inch smaller on, you know, the bottom, actually 1/4 inch on the bottom, and then both sides, which means that you cut it 1/2 inch smaller. And so that way it slides. And then what you're going to do is you're going to put the foam tape on 3 sides. And that's how I discovered that I made a mistake, because then it didn't slide. I didn't have a place to put my foam tape. So yeah, it goes on the 2 sides and the bottom. And so I use, you know, whatever foam sticky strips I can find. These particular ones are for Tailored Expressions. They are, I think they're 1/8 of an inch. So they're very, very thin. It's almost impossible to cut foam tape yourself that thin, really. I mean, you kind of can, but it's rough. So it's kind of nice to have these strips. And I did just buy some from Amazon that someone recommended. I haven't tried them yet, so we'll see how they work. But I still have some of these left. So the foam goes on 3 sides, and when you discover that you can't put foam on one of the sides, then that means that your little cardstock piece is in the wrong way. So that's how I discovered it. I was like, dang it. So, yeah, that's how you kind of discover it's not moving. And so, anyway, I do fix it. Don't worry. And so then your foam piece is going to go directly onto the card, and that cardstock piece should be pointing towards the bottom, and then that is what you glue your front piece on. Okay, so I fixed it, and that's the fixed piece right there, the magic of television. I'm using my Barely Arts glue, which I love. I just refilled it. So here is the pancake, and now you can stamp your sentiments. You can stamp them before, might be best, but I am stamping them at the end, so you can kind of see me stamping. But I use the VersaFine Clair, which is a very sort of wet ink. So I usually like to use my Misty, but when you use a wet ink like the VersaFine Clair, I mean, it does a really crisp job, so you don't have to worry about restamping usually. So I think it's a good move to use that ink. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp an image sort of underneath the pancake, so when you slide it, you can see the sentiment. And then I'm also going to do a sentiment on the pull out piece. I know I have a stamp somewhere that says pull, but I cannot find it. So you can just write the word pull right there on that little tab. You can use a lot of things for the tab. You can stamp one of the little strawberries. You could put a little circle. If you have a tab, you can do it, but you can do anything at the top that you'd like to put something to pull. Or you can just make a longer piece and not have a notch and just write pull at the top. So there's a lot that you can do. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp that pull-out piece. It says, have a great day. And see, it stamps really nicely. So once it's in, then it slides and it reveals all the different messages. And trust me, it is easy. I just got myself turned around. And then the last bit is I'm going to go ahead and use some of these enamel dots. These are also from the Not Too Shabby shop. I want to say these are the fall ones, but they worked really well. So I just put 3 of them over there in the corner. I didn't want to impede the movement of the card. And so here are my 2 cards using that fun pancake stamp set. Thank you for watching. This is Cindy, Crank the Heart.